Hi, Dr. Mayo with BizCrown Media, here to talk about content consumption and its relevance now to marketing. And now you may be wondering, what is that? Well, content marketing has evolved, and as should, because the way we now consume content is totally different than the way we used to before. So a good way was probably back in the day, you'd wake up, watch TV, which was a general channel, listen to a general radio station on your drive to work, read a general newspaper. But things have changed completely now, because now you could wake up and then just watch a Roku channel, get in the car and listen to a podcast on Spotify, get into work and get your news on social media. And you've skipped all those other channels. And so it lets you know now that how things are consumed from a content perspective is also very, very important. And as a marketer, you really have to consider that, or you might be missing out on helping a whole lot more people, knowing exactly what you have to offer. And so you might be wondering, what ways now do you have to do, or what should you think about? Well, think about how it's consumed. People now watch Netflix, they now watch Roku on devices or streaming sticks now. They ask their digital assistants, whether it's Alexa or Siri, questions for them to answer. It has all changed. And as a marketer now, you have to start going, how then do I get things on Alexa? Or how do I make it so that my content is Alexa worthy? Or how do I make it that my content, when it's being asked through Google, is actually spitting out the right things that I wanted to spit? Or do I get a Roku channel myself and start creating content on that? Or do I start a podcast that just generates a lot of interest from another diverse set of population that could be a good consumer to me, and then just generates more traffic and then more business in that way? So these are the ways now that we have to start looking at how to create content, not just looking at it as the intent, which is really still important, but how that intent is going to be consumed in a world where there's just so much information and devices that we're inundated with, but that we have to live with. And as a result, as a marketer, those are ways to start thinking on how to reach the consumer. So now let's get into a little bit more detail, because you'd say, okay, this is Brett and Dan, and you've told us all these channels. How then can we actually create content and put our content on there? And I'll go through a few just to give you ideas, but keep in mind, there are also tons of avenues, and it's just understanding these platforms. So the first one is, let's talk about streaming. We have audio streamers now, and we have visual streamers. So an audio streamer is Spotify. As mentioned, you can create podcasts, and you'd be surprised that lots of businesses are now capitalizing on that, creating podcasts, because the audio experience is a niche on its own. And because we do a lot of things that's not letting us stay glued to visual things at the same time, the audio experience becomes a unique place to put your stuff there, you know. But you have to think about it when you're creating audio. I was making a webinar recently, and I thought about, hey, wouldn't that be good to translate it to audio? But the webinar was created in such a way that I was talking about things you could see on the screen, and it would be a little confusing for maybe an audience without seeing that. So those are things to consider when you're doing audio or visual or thinking about converting. But that's a good way. You can create podcasts that will generate interest from, again, a vast amount of people, and will direct traffic to you and therefore business. And then you can also help them out. Visual streaming are things like movies, like Netflix, the streamers, Amazon and stuff. And you'll be surprised that depending on what kind of content you create, you can have your stuff featured on things on there that can expose you. There was an artist, a huge artist, I think last year, that it was a song heard on Netflix that became popular that actually blew her up, right? So not just from any other channels, not from a show, but a song being on Netflix. And that's how many other people's stories are. And so there's different ways that you can maybe try to infiltrate your content, whether it's audio or even visual, in places like that. Get to know people that are making movies on there and see for ways that can infiltrate your content. They can feature your content. And think about it. Content is all about eyeballs and stuff. And this could relate to a general audience in much perspectives. Now think about it also, they also do audio ads on places like Spotify. So even if you're not creating content to put on Spotify. You could market, do advertising to put on Spotify and still not miss from the audio experience. Next one is streaming devices. So we have devices now like the Roku stick, which I was talking about. And with the Roku stick, what I've noticed is I've even gotten emails where you can actually create your own Roku channel. Yes, so that means you can have your own TV station on a popular device that's way widely accessible to a whole lot of people. And so creating your own channel opens a whole lot of opportunities for you to create directed content. Hey, have you always wanted to start a show that could be featured on a mass platform? Well, there you go. On Roku, you can actually do that. You could create content. You can look for ways to start your own channel. Then we also have personal items. So you have like your watch, your phone, and all that. Creating content also for that is also important. So think of it, for somebody, I've seen a lot of people that all they do now is communicate through their phone. And so creating content that can be optimized or sort of digested to fit that format is going to be becoming important, because you have to consider, when do they look at their watch? What's the split second that they look at their, or how many seconds do they look at their watch for you to capture their idea? Or what can you provide that's sort of haptic, that can make it even a different experience for them? And there are apps, there are ways, there are content management systems you'd be surprised that you could use to create stuff like that, different apps that just with a good psychology of how things work and translate, you will even use web-based platforms to bring out magic these days. And that'll take you really, really, really far. Then digital assistants, just like we said, like Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant. And you might know Alexa, you could create a skill on Alexa that's making your content Alexa worthy. You could create a skill on Alexa that then helps you reach people that are searching for stuff on Alexa. You can optimize your content for all these audio platforms. And when I say optimize, you have to think about it. When I'm perceiving content visually, it's different from audio and stuff. And you have to be sort of mindful of that. As stated, you could create a great webinar that could be great visually, but then putting that on audio without somebody to really see exactly what you're doing, if you didn't think about that initially, then that might not meet the point. Also, you have things like virtual reality out there. A lot of people are into VR now. So do you create content that goes into VR? How do you do that? There are tons of tools out there that you can use to do that. And that's also a wide audience that you reach. What about gamers? There are tons of ways. Gaming is so huge right now. It's so huge that it's a major thing. I'm fortunate that we have some music that's licensed through some channels that are used by gamers. So it's interesting that and this was content that wasn't even created with that in mind. Now, if you think about if we created that with that in mind, the chances that we would get more licenses are probably going to be very, very high. So those are all the avenues. Now, I've mentioned a few, there are tons other, but these are basic ones when you think of it that are existing out there now. And as time goes, we're going to see more new devices. And a good thing is to sort of understand which one your audience is sort of gravitating to. We know the boomers, for instance, love audio because they can ask it questions and stuff. So if a good amount of your audience are baby boomers, then it's just makes sense that you target them through audio, knowing that in many instances they're going to ask questions for the audio that they would want to hear beautiful news from you spit out. And so those are a few channels that you now as a marketer or as a business owner have to consider, that all these things I've mentioned, what you have to look at is your consumers are already on them. Yes, and that's a fact. Sit back and relax and go, wait, which one of my consumers aren't doing all of this? And you'll be so shocked that at least 1 to 2 to 3 of them are being done by or ways that your consumer is actually using to connect out there. So knowing that now gives you the opportunity to go through a content evolution process, which is considering how to reach them, not just the intent that they might be looking for, but not just the intent what they may be looking for, but also where they're going to be reading this content and in what situation, on the move, in the car, at home, talking to the kids. All that stuff are great considerations now. And I hope this helps. Good luck. Take care.